Hello and welcome back. Let's talk about van life money. Woohoo! Yeah, this is not really cash, it's just paper that we printed for this video specifically. Or is it?
You will never find it.
So today we're back to the Van Life A to Z series where we answer all of your popular van build and van life related questions, and today is one of the more popular questions that we get, and is how much is van life costing us? Because anything to do with money, obviously that's a big concern for a lot of us. You know, how do you afford a van build? How do you afford van life? Is it really cheaper?
Yeah, like how does it actually compare living in a van to living like in a regular house with normal bills and such and such? So what we thought we would do is sit down and go through our entire expenses of 2022 living full-time with pets in a van and break it down to show you how much we're spending each month and on what. Hold on, let me take this cash out of my t-shirt.
So we're going to be telling you how much we have spent in the first 10 months of full-time van life, but do note that this is our first year of van life, it is our moving in year, and we're still doing a few van build bits and pieces.
So are we keeping the laptop like this?
Yes, otherwise it'll be like, you know, there'll be a barrier between us and you, and it will not be very welcoming.
Very well. So the first section that we've got is food, and this is split down basically into supermarket and eating out. And over the 10 months we spent £2,841 on food total, so that's a monthly cost of £284. Now most of that food, £2,288 of it, was supermarket food, and we spent £553 eating out, which I would say is actually about right. We don't really eat out a lot. We ate out more when we were like traveling around in France and Spain and Italy, but most of the time we cook in the van.
Yeah, in terms of groceries, the things that we spend the most on is really green veg and fruits and stuff, because they're not cheap, really.
No, and especially now in the winter. Like in the summer, they were a lot cheaper, but now in the winter, they're ridiculously expensive.
And in terms of buying meat, we don't buy that much meat. It's too much bother to keep, really. Yeah. But we do buy a fair amount of salmon recently, so because that's kind of what we fancy. Yeah. So that's
so our monthly bill for food is £284 a month.
Yeah, and I have no idea whether these numbers are low or high, because it's all relative. So if you want to share your numbers in the comments below, just let us know in any category or all the categories. Just let us know, but be nice, okay? Just, you know, everybody's spending whatever they want. It's their money to spend however they wish, so don't be rude. Anyway, in terms of travel costs, we spent £876 for the entire year, which for a monthly cost is about £87. Yeah. And that's broken down into parking, tolls, attractions, accommodation, and other forms of transport. Yeah.
Now, the most expensive thing out of all of those was the other forms of transport, mostly because of the ferry. We took the ferry 4 times. Out down to Spain and back, then out down to Italy and back. Each time is like £100, and then we had the cats for 3 of those trips, so that's an extra £50 away. So most of that extra transport cost is the ferry. Accommodation, we only stayed in an Airbnb once because I needed to fix my laptop and we needed an address, so we just booked an Airbnb in Spain for a couple of days.
And did the washing.
Yeah, a lot of washing.
10 times over. We booked one with a washing machine. Pro tip: if you have to book accommodation, book it with the services that you normally pay for separately.
Attractions was £288, and all of that was van life events. So we went to Quirky, we went to Van Life Eats, we went to Stratford.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 that we went to, I think.
Quite a few. I don't remember anymore. But actually, becoming a van lifer, generally, you increase the amount you spend on festivals. Yes. That's what we found out.
Yeah, so we didn't actually really pay for any other attractions whilst we were in the UK or in Europe.
Because our main attraction is really hiking and just walking around. So.
Yeah, so most of the places that we visited, like we did a glacier walk, we went down to some really cool places down in southern Spain when it wasn't raining, and all the other places in France that we did in the summer, those were all free because they're just nature walks exploring, things like that. We don't really go to many
There's
attractions.
plenty of kind of ruins and old stuff to see without paying for it.
Oh,
so
and I can't wait this upcoming trip to go.
Okay, moving on. Other expenses is van fuel. So the biggest expenses that we have in the van are food and van fuel. Okay,
Yes.
so actually the fuel to run the van.
Yeah,
Okay?
so this is the driving fuel, because we've got a separate fuel tank for the diesel heater, so we know exactly how much we're spending on van fuel and heater fuel. So the van fuel cost us £2,207, or an average of £220 per month, which equivalates to about a tank and a half of fuel at current prices. A tank and a half of fuel a month.
And as some of you may know, so roughly halfway through the year, we introduced a 1 tank of fuel per month.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a video here. But essentially, that more or less worked very well to make us slow down our pace. But because throughout this year we had 4 really crazy drives, the basically long distance, a lot of fuel,
In
really
a very
quickly,
short amount of time.
that kind of sort of upped it up.
£220 a month on fuel, even if that's...
It's really good. I'm just pointing out that was the challenge, and we'll probably try and do that next year as well and see how that goes.
And then in terms of the heater fuel, we spent £134 over the 10 months, or about £13.50 a month on our fuel for the diesel heater. And that, we haven't been through a full winter yet.
Hasn't been a full winter, but at the moment it's about £13.50 per month for the heating bill.
On average. Like in the summer, we barely used it. Although we didn't have the hot water plumbed up, so we didn't use the heater for the hot water in the summer.
True, so that might be a little bit higher next year, maybe about £20 per month. But overall...
Heater, considering the heating costs at the moment, especially in the UK, over this winter, I would say £20 a month on average. It's pretty good.
So for the cooking gas, we spent £115 for the year, which is about £11.50 per month.
Yeah, and now I would say that is actually a little bit kind of inflated, because most of that gas is still up there.
Yeah,
stored.
So we bought excess amount of gas this year because A, gas prices were going up, B, there were shortages of gas, and we were like, well, for winter we may need more gas to cook with, which is true, because we can't actually use our electric cooking at the moment because we don't have enough battery power and barely any sun, and it's absolutely freezing. And the sun is like there. Come on, we're not in Norway. What's wrong?
And tilting solar panels will not only have to do that, they would just have to keep going. There we go.
So even though we spend that much on gas, most of it is actually unused yet. And because of the super duper secret project that we're working on in the following week, we may not actually need much of this gas next year.
So I'm suspecting that our gas cost next year might be 0. Mechanical repairs.
It was rather a busy
year. Is that the word you're using? You're going with busy.
Busy mechanical repair year. Could have been worse, and as some of you may know, we got very good prices on actually getting the timing belt and all the pulleys and stuff fixed, so it could have been like thousands more worse than what we actually paid.
So we paid £1,643, or about £165 a month for our mechanical repairs, and that's MOTs, oil changes, filter changes. We did the tyres, we did the front brakes, we did the timing belt, the alternator belts, the fan belt, the timing belt. Am I missing anything else? Probably am. Little bits and pieces.
Well, you did the oil thing twice.
Twice.
And you did the filters and other bits. Did you say the tyres? I lost count.
Yeah, I did the tyres.
So there were a lot of bits to fix. It's just we didn't pay. Well, we barely paid one and a half. For all of this. Luckily, any of the other major components of the van are still running and they're okay. So as long as we obviously Sam keeps on top of maintenance, because he's
that's
the
my
one,
job.
He's the one that does all the oil changes and stuff and keeps things in check. We should be healthy. Fingers crossed.
I mean, also this is kind of like the first big year of mechanical repairs, because whilst we were building the van, I mean, we didn't drive the van as much, but we were still driving it, and in those 2 years, I don't have the numbers specifically on this table, but
we barely fixed
anything. We did the oil when it needed to, did its MOT. I think it had a tiny little bearing that was like 20 quid to fix, and that was it. That's all we did over the 2 years of building the van. We had no mechanical repair costs pretty much at all.
So we were due.
So we were due, and we got a good price. So I'm hoping next year that price will be low.
Yeah, and then the year after that, most likely will be due for something again, and then it kind of goes like that. But
yeah, so I would say overall the mechanical repair cost was not actually too bad.
Yep.
Do you know what was bad though? Tax and insurance. Tax and insurance is unavoidable. We spent £290 for the year taxing the van and £857 on insuring it, which was a total cost of £1,147 or £114 per month.
You know, whilst reading these numbers, I can just hear the typing on the keyboard. It's like, that's not much money at all. What are you talking about? I spent 1,000, 2,000 on this and that. I was like, I know that all of these insurances, the mechanical repairs, everything is a lot more expensive for some people for various reasons, and that's fair game. Share your story, just do it politely, and just I was just hearing it in my head, just kind of like, oh yeah, somebody's gonna say that this is cheap. It's like, well yeah, it can be worse. Just perspective. We don't actually have that much money. Blanket statement. We don't have that much money. So these numbers, we count things in lithium batteries. A lithium battery is about 700 to 1,000 pounds. Okay, so this is how we calculate things. So every time we spend about 700 pounds, I was like, oh, that's not the battery. That's not the battery.
So we spent a battery this year on tax and insurance.
Okay, anyway, moving on.
Business expenses.
Business expenses. For the business expenses, we spent £757, and that is about £75 per month. The business expenses are really anything that we put into our Freedom Strider business. So that's the thing that earns us money to basically live and stay on the road and keep producing the videos, keep producing the resources that we do. So that's things like the website, the services that help us distribute the van build resources, like the downloadables and all the payment gateways, things like
the email client, we've got ConvertKit, we've got a few other plugins and such for the website.
Yeah, anything that helps us run our consultations, like all of these ticking and moving parts that makes the business or makes a business run is essentially what kind of goes into that. So yeah, that's basically another battery. Yeah. We've spent also another battery on pets this year.
So we got the pets. We got our cats pretty close to the beginning of our van life journey.
We got them in March, end of March.
End of March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
when we met them.
Over the cost, over this van life year, we have spent £788, or about £78 a month, on our cats.
Yeah, so that's 2 cats, which honestly, to me, it's not that much money to actually spend on your cat.
And that's everything. That's all their travel documents, their insurance, all their food,
like the
toys,
and stuff.
Everything else that the cats have basically needed to survive.
There were a few small vet bills that we had to take care of because somebody needed toothpaste. Now, theoretically, this cost might be lower next year because there wouldn't be like the travel documents set up, hopefully. But then there could be like another vet bill or something that they need or other. So
who knows?
You know, a battery a year for your cat is not much to ask, isn't it? So because this is the year that we moved into the van, all of the kind of the decoration and the finishing touches, kind of the home improvements, kind of home decor stuff have really been clustered this year. So we've actually spent £430 on random, like the curtains, the fake plants, a crate,
bits and bobs.
Actually, no, we have a bits and bob section. This is not the bits and bobs section.
No. Yeah. So this is literally just decoration and additional functionality that we added to the van. 400.
Yeah, so it's not like a hardcore van build project, but like a new light box or just adding other bits and pieces to the van. Kind of just home improvements. Okay, you got it right.
More blankets.
All of that basically comes to about £43 a month.
Yep.
Hopefully next year will be less, because how much more can you fill this space? I don't know.
We'll find a way.
Yeah, and then we have another section of the leftover van build stuff. So
yeah, because at the beginning of this year, even when we moved in, we were still doing like van build tasks is what I would classify as. Like we had to finish up the shower a little bit and actually in the coming next few videos, you will see, because this cost is also incorporated into this, we have done a bit more to the shower.
Yeah, because earlier this year we did a video on how much did our van build cost, and that video has the like the lower cost of the plumbing, so the plumbing at the time that we had, and now we've upgraded the plumbing as of the filming of this video. So you can hear the cost. We spent £706 on the leftover van build bits and pieces.
For about £70 a month. And that's basically on anything that we either usually do a video for, but anything that is actually physically building or adding functionality to the van. So like this table, the lagoon table, the plumbing in the shower. I think the skylight is actually included in this cost, because that was bought at the beginning of this year. Wood, screws, etc. Things like that. Wood always costs a lot.
So roughly another battery on finishing the van. And the final section that we have is bits and bobs, which includes anything from buying clothes to going to the cinema, or
buying a pencil, or
we love stationery,
getting
books,
art supplies, books, downloading a game, anything like that. Literally just, I would classify it as like personal expenses. Anything that you just go out to the shops and like buy a whisk. Or, I don't know, who goes out to the shop and buys a whisk?
We do.
We do.
Because our whisk was too big.
And therefore we needed a smaller whisk.
Yeah, so all of these things that really do not deserve a category of their own, because we don't make a habit of buying kitchen appliances and utensils that often.
So the bits and bobs section was £506.38 per month, or about £50 a month on kind of like just general bits and bobs. And the final section is van internet. So our personal phone internet is included in that bits and bobs section, but the van's internet, so the one that is in here, the one that's in here, the SIM card that's in here, is £16 a month. It's a Smarty 3 unlimited SIM card, which for the UK is good enough. We are thinking about alternatives for Europe for the free roaming data and such, but at the moment, £16 a month for unlimited internet.
Yeah, so next year I think that is definitely going to rise, because we are probably going to invest into something that's more reliable across borders, because when we work on the road so intensively, it's really a hassle that every time you change border, you have to change SIM card, and that would usually involve you going to an appropriate store, not be able to speak the language properly and use Google Translate, and then convince them that this is what you need and that's what you want, and then you usually need an address of some sort, so then you have to pick an address from across the street, and it's a whole hassle. So anyway, and sometimes you don't have anyone helpful. Sometimes you do have very helpful people. Sometimes they're like, no, go away. That is the categories. That brings the grand total of this first year of van life to £12,316.
Or about £1,200 a month.
Give or take. So
that is our entire expenditure. Everything pretty much that we spend that comes out of our bank accounts is included in that cost in some form or another. So that's basically our outgoings. That's how much it costs us to live van life, or just full time
to live life,
or to live life in a van.
Yeah, so obviously it is significantly lower than having a mortgage or renting, and then having the bills on top, and then having to buy the food and everything that basically we listed out here, more or less. I think generally the kind of the driving fuel cost is usually higher than most people's.
And yeah, I would say over these 10 months we spent about 4 months in Europe this year.
Yes.
We spent 4 months in Europe and 6 months in the UK. And
we actually haven't been to like a very cheap country, because in Europe you can kind of cross the border and certainly be in a rather cheaper atmosphere. But we've kind of stayed more for the sort of the western side, which is kind of the same price.
So yeah, £1,200 a month is our expenditure. Is there more to say on that?
I don't know. Do you
I felt like I was going somewhere with that, but I didn't.
Do you want to know more about our expenses? Is there something that we missed?
How does this compare to your living costs? Do you think it's quite expensive, quite cheap? Which kind of sections do you think we spent more or less on? Basically, just have a lovely explanation and discussion down in the comments.
Oh, and by the way, no, we don't feel like we're lacking anything because we've spent this much money. If it does seem like it's too little money to spend on life.
Yeah, I would say actually £1,200 a month for us. Like, we haven't skimped out anything this year. Like, we haven't not done something because we're like, oh, that's going to be really expensive. Let's not do that. If we wanted to do something, if we wanted to go to somewhere, we did it. And if we didn't want to go somewhere, then we didn't. And so kind of like, we weren't overly excessive, but we weren't overly conservative. It was kind of a good middle ground. And as we said, this first year of van life has been the moving in year. So there's been a lot of teething problems. We obviously got cats very early on. And then there's been quite a few mechanical repairs and tinkering bits that we've had to kind of like add on, which is probably upped the cost a little bit.
But who knows? Maybe that's van life. You just always have tinkery stuff to do, and
maybe
the cost is always that. Cause
maybe
based on our friends, there's a lot of tinkery stuff to do.
There's always tinkering stuff to do. There's always something to do.
Anyway, leave your stories, leave your questions down below, and we'll just do more videos like this.